Metallica's back, bitches! What's going on, people? We have a new Metallica album. Holy shit. This thing felt like it was never going to get here. Before I even start my review, let me go ahead and state clearly what kind of Metallica fan I am, because there are many different forms of Metallica fans. There's those who believe the first 4 albums are it. There's those that believe up to Black Album is it. There's those that like everything that they do regardless of quality. There's those who like albums sporadically here and there, songs here and there. There's those that hate them. It goes on and on and on. I love just about everything that Metallica has ever done, with the exception of Saint Anger and Lulu, but we don't talk about that one. There's a few good tunes on Saint Anger, but I would argue that even the good ones are very poor conceived songs. I love Load, I love Reload. By no means are they the greatest albums from Metallica, but I love the sound. There's a lot of really experimental directions that those albums took, and I honestly believe if any other band but Metallica released those albums, they'd be hailed as classics. But because it's Metallica, and they weren't Master of Puppets Part 2 or Black Album Part 2, people were pissed. And understandably so in some ways. You know, I grew up to where I had all these albums available to me at one time, so it wasn't like I had years to wait for their follow-up to Black Album, and then I got Load and Reload and didn't understand the style change. So I understand it to a degree, but I love those albums. So just put that out there. Saint Anger is the only thing that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's a disappointment from these guys. Now, the big question everybody had before this album, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, came out is, what is the sound of this album going to be like? Is it going to be a sequel, basically, to Death Magnetic? Is it going to be like their older albums that everybody hails and loves? Is it going to be more along the sound of their 90s albums? Is this going to be something completely new and off the wall? What are they going to do? The way that I will describe the style and the sound of Hardwired to Self-Destruct is it fits somewhere neatly between Black Album and the Load and Reload albums. Leaning a little bit more heavy on the Black Album in some songs, leaning a little bit more heavily on the Load and Reload sound in some songs. And it also, while being stuck between those two styles, and those two writing styles and sounds, it has the attitude and the ferocity and the fuck you sound of the first 4 albums. So that may sound convoluted, but if you're a diehard Metallica fan, you're getting an idea where I'm going. This album, to me, is probably their most focused, their most complete sounding album that they've released since Black Album. As much as I love Load and Reload, I can understand completely how people say that those albums are very disjointed and kind of uncoordinated, and they're hit and miss. I get it. This album is not that. This album has a direction, it has a focus, they have a goal that they went for, and that goal was to walk up to everybody. That's like, this album is Metallica walking into a room full of haters, full of people who have doubted them, full of people that say that they are no longer relevant, and Metallica walks into that room and says, oh, we're not relevant anymore? Listen to that shit. From the opening song of this album, Hardwired, you know that Metallica is here to deliver a statement, and they are not leaving until that fucking statement is heard. So now that I've gotten my initial impressions of this album out of the way, I'm going to go track by track and give you my thoughts on each song individually, and then I'll wrap up with my overall thoughts of this album. Hardwired. This song is old school thrash metal. It's short, it's sweet, it's full of attitude. It goes back to Metallica's roots. This is them coming in, kicking your ass for 3 minutes, and getting out quick. This was the first song that Metallica released for all their fans to hear, and everybody that heard this went, what? Old school fans stood up and cheered because they're giving more of what they love, and the new school fans sat there and they were like, you know, I remember that sound. I like this. All right. It gets this album off to a really fast, kick-ass, attitude-fueled start. It sets up the whole tone of the album. It sets up the whole attitude of the album perfectly, and it bookends really well with the final track, Spit Out the Bone, which I'll get to later. Atlas Rise. Now, before I heard this album in its entirety, this was my favorite song that I had heard from Metallica in quite a while. Out of the 3 singles that they released for this song, this was by far my favorite. I love the 80s sound to it. It has a really old school thrash sound to it, and just an old school metal in general sound to it. You can really hear Metallica's influences in this. from Judas Priest to Iron Maiden. They do some great guitar melodies in this. Kirk Hammett delivers an awesome solo. The guitar tone is really classic, clean, and yet heavy. I love the bridge in this. This is like one of those heavy bridges where as soon as it kicks in, you're just like, and it just takes you on a ride from the beginning to the end of the song. It goes so many different directions that you don't expect it to, and it does it in a good way. It doesn't feel disjointed. It feels like it has a direction and it has a motivation and it takes you there. I like the lyrics of the song a lot, and I really love how this is just a perfect callback to what Metallica was just brought onto the scene for. Everybody who loves Metallica and their old school loves the way that this song was written, recorded, and arranged. This is a perfect Metallica song, and this is going to be a staple in their live show from now until they decide to retire. You mark my words. Now That We're Dead. Now this song, when I first heard it, when I listened to this album front to back, was such a surprise for me because when I first started, I said, holy shit, they actually went back to the load and reload sound, and I was so happy as a fan of those albums. This song fits perfectly into the style and the sound of that whole 90s Metallica era. It's really heavy, it's got a great groove to it. I mean, it's impossible not to just sit there and just bang your head listening to this song. The lyrics are pretty simple, but I like the way that they kind of hone that in with the style of the song. There's a good little blistering solo by Kirk Hammett. It's not my favorite solo on the album, but it's a good one. And just this song is groove. It's groove to me. It's a nice little break from the style of the first two songs where it's that blistering 80s thrash metal, and then this one kind of slows it back down and gives you that classic 90s Metallica groove. It's a good little moment to breathe, you know, from the energy of those first two songs, and then you get into this kind of slow, just chug, 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 chug groove of this song. It's a nice little breath of fresh air from Metallica going back to that style, and it's a nice little moment to breathe on the style of this album. Moth into Flame. Now this was the second song that they released as a single for this album, and man, what a kick-ass track. This is another song that's going to be a staple in their live shows from now on. You can mark my words on that one too. I love the build-up to this song. This song, the first 45 seconds to a minute of this song is just one riff leading into another, leading into another, leading into another beautifully. This does what Death Magnetic did a little bit wonky. Because Death Magnetic, I like that album a lot, but you can tell that the writing and the arrangement of those songs was a little disjointed. You can tell that they had a lot of different riffs that they liked and they wanted to choose from, and they stuck some riffs next to each other that didn't quite flow. This song flows. It slowly builds into a kick-ass little heavy riff that goes through all the verses. The chorus is really catchy, and I love the bridge in this song. This, just like Atlas Rise, but even more so in this song, is just that classic Metallica kick-ass rhythm chug. Whenever this bridge of this song starts, I don't care who you are, Metallica fan or not, you're going to be in a room like this. My only negative for this song, and it's a very, very small nitpick, is that I feel like when he actually says the words, when James says moth into the flame, it feels a little bit like too many syllables crammed into a line for a song. It doesn't feel like it flows 100% for me. You know, moth into the flame, it just doesn't quite flow 100%. But again, it's grown on me a lot. It stood out to me a lot when I first heard the song. Now I barely even recognize it, but I will point that out as a small negative. Dream No More. Now, as it stands today, Dream No More is my favorite song on this album. That might change tomorrow, it might change the more I listen to this album, but this is the song that I just keep going back to, cranking all the way to 11 and driving down the fucking highway with my windows down. I love the groove and the heavy chug of this song. Dream No More, just like Now That You're Dead, has that kick-ass classic 90s Metallica vibe to it. It has that groove that I love from Load and Reload. The verse just carries you through this song. I love the heavy chug riff that goes throughout the chorus. It's probably my favorite moment on the album, and that's really what keeps me coming back to this song. It's heavy, it's kick-ass. James's voice, like on this album altogether, his voice sounds better than it sounded in years, but in this song especially, and in Spit Out the Bone, which I'll get out to, that really heavy, aggressive, just gruff to his voice stands out totally on this song. I'm going to use a Pineapple Express reference to describe what I think about Dream No More. Dream No More is like that thing that should not be, and Sad But True got together and had a baby, and Leper Messiah and some kind of monster got together and had a baby, and by some miracle of fate, those two babies met, and fucked, you would have Dream No More. Halo on Fire. This is the epic track on this album. This is the track that you expect a lot of different instrumental sections for. This is the longest track on the album by just over a minute, and it is the closing track of the first CD. So, with being a closing track and being the epic track, you expect a lot of different changes with this song, and you get all of that. It's got a really toned down verse, which is the first track on this album to kind of give that another moment to breathe. You know, everything else is just balls to the wall pretty much the whole time. This kind of gives it a moment to settle. And it starts off really slow, and the verse is it's got a clean guitar behind it, so it's not meant to like bust you in the face. And then the chorus kicks in, and then it just, along with James's voice, he kind of screams up into the chorus, and the instruments kind of scream up into the chorus as well. It's really cool. Beyond that, there's a lot of really interesting instrumental changes in this song, and it goes in a lot of directions that you don't see it going. Again, this is one of those tracks that takes you in a lot of surprises, takes you on a lot of turns that you don't see coming, and yet it flows the whole time. It doesn't feel disjointed. It doesn't feel like multiple tracks mashed into one. This song takes you on a journey. That's what you expect from an epic track, and it's a great closeout to the first disc. It also has a pretty kick-ass solo by Kirk Hammett. Confusion. Now this is the opening track to the second disc of this album, and as an opening track, it's a little strangely placed because it doesn't really have that opening kickoff track feel to it. It feels more like a middle track, but it's a really good track. This one fits perfectly into that load and reload sound again, just like Now That We're Dead and Dream No More. A little bit more so in this song actually, because it's not quite as heavy and brutal as those other two songs. This one, you could almost believe, if this was released as a B-side to Load and Reload, you would believe it immediately. Not that a B-side is in a negative connotation, it's in a good way. But the chorus to this song has a really good kind of bluesy vibe to it. And the biggest thing that I'll say about this song is that I love the instrumental section with the guitar solo, because it goes on this really cool little path where, Kirk Hammett starts blistering through this solo, and then it feels like the song is getting ready to stop. And then it starts up again, and then it feels like it's going to stop. And then it starts up again, so it kind of teases you at the end of the solo, and then it's almost like Kirk takes a breath, and then just blows through another half of the solo. I thought it was really cool how they arranged that, and I love this track for that reason alone. Other than that, like I said, it's a really kick-ass callback to Load and Reload, fits perfectly in those albums, just a little strange that it's an opening track. It doesn't have that opening track feel to it. Man Unkind. Now this song to me sounds almost like a spiritual sequel to the song Ronnie. If you remember Ronnie from Load, this song has a very, very similar rhythm bluesy lead. It's very bluesy. This is probably the bluesiest influenced song on this album. Now I will understand completely why, from what I've read online, this is a lot of people's least favorite track on this album. And I think that's because this song is such a stylistic standout that it doesn't quite flow with the whole album as a whole. I still love this track a lot. I actually love the bluesy stuff from Metallica. That's another reason why I love Load and Reload. I love that stylistic change that they have, and they pull it off well, in my opinion. This song is a great little callback to that. But this is probably going to be a lot of your least favorite song in this album because it stands out, sticks out like a sore thumb. Here Comes Revenge. Now this is the only other track on this album that chooses to have a clean toned guitar behind its verse, so it's another one of those moments to kind of chill until that chorus comes and punches you in the face, because it's a pretty kick-ass chorus. It's got a nice little speed metal riff with it that pairs really well with the way that James sings this chorus. Even though the chorus is kind of my negative in this song, because even though I do like the chorus for the most part, and it has a really good catchy vibe to it paired with that riff, the writing style for the lyrics on this song, my own personal pet peeve for some choruses, I don't really tend to care for choruses that repeat the same word over and over and over again. And he says revenge and then says a line, revenge, says a line, revenge, says a line. And just to me, that's my own personal thing. A lot of people are never going to think that, are never going to pay attention to that. My own personal pet peeve with that, that's what holds this track back a little bit for me. Am I Savage? Now this is probably my least favorite song on this album. I don't hate this song by any means, but it's a song that I find myself skipping past the most when I listen to it. It's a very mellow, it's more of a slow-paced song than the rest of the album. It goes back to that kind of bluesy sound to it, but it doesn't pull it off near as well as the other tracks do. I like the verse riff in this. That's where the blues part of it comes in, but there's different sections leading up to the, from the verse to the chorus, and it feels a little disjointed to me. This is kind of more along the lines of how Death Magnetic felt in parts, where it feels like one riff and one line of dialogue, and another riff and one line of dialogue, but it doesn't quite flow through it. It's kind of a jarring change. And the chorus goes back to what I was saying on the last track. It's one of those choruses that repeats the same line of dialogue over and over again. Am I savage? And then he says something. Am I savage? And then he says something. So again, my own personal pet peeve. People might not care at all about that, but that is just what brings this track back a little bit more for me. That with just the very kind of mellow, slow-paced, lack of a better word, kind of uninteresting track. So this is my least favorite track on this album. Murder One. Now this song is actually a tribute track to Lemmy Kilmister, the lead singer from Motorhead that we unfortunately lost not too long ago. And lyrically, this song is very, very good. If you're a fan of Motorhead or Lemmy Kilmister, you're going to eat this shit up because it's a really great tribute to Lemmy. I'm a little confused of why they didn't go for more of a Motorhead style song to tribute to Lemmy, but nonetheless, it's a very cool tribute to Lemmy. Now, behind Am I Savage, unfortunately, this is probably my second least favorite song on this album. And it's not a bad track by any means. It's a very good track. It's got some kick-ass riffs here and there, but this sticks with the more kind of disjointed style. It feels like the transitions aren't so smooth in this song like they are in the majority of the rest of the album. It's a little jarring for me. And aside from the fact that all the Lemmy Kilmister tribute lyrics, that's really the main takeaway from this is the lyrics. Everything else is just... It's not an uninteresting track like I feel like Am I Savage is. It's just more of kind of the middle of the road track. This is a song that I don't hate. It's a song that I don't love. But it's a song that once in a while I do find myself skipping. Spit out the bone! This song kicks major ass. This is going to be a lot of people's favorite track off of this album. People are going to walk away saying, man, that closing track, what a fucking finale. And they are right. This is a crazy way to close out this album. It closes out with a punch. This song is literally like Metallica strapping you to a chair and then just punching you in the fucking face for 7 minutes. This song is brutal. It's got attitude. It's got just so much that Metallica fans look for in Metallica music is in this song, and they nail it. Spit Out the Bone is one of the best tracks that they've released in a long time, and this song has the most heart, attitude, and ferocity in any track that they've released since And Justice for All. Alright guys, so you know my initial thoughts of this album. You know my thoughts on each track individually. Now I'm going to try to wrap up my ideas of what this album is. This album is the best album that Metallica has released since the Black Album. I honestly believe that. I'm a big fan of Load and Reload. I love those albums. I will defend them to the day I die, but they are a little bit disjointed. I'm a big fan of some parts of Saint Anger. Very few parts, but some parts. But that's by far their worst album. I'm a big fan of Death Magnetic. However, that album, the more you listen to it, is diminishing returns. The flaws really start to show more the more you listen to that album. The disjointed writing, some of the rushed parts of that album, just the way that they're trying to please all their fans without really focusing on the song as a whole. I love that album, but it has its flaws. This album is the most focused and the most complete Metallica album that we've gotten since the Black Album. But it's not without its flaws. Not only have I picked out a few of the flaws of the individual tracks, but the main flaw with this album was the choice to make it a double disc album. I still don't understand the creative reason for that. There's not like there's one disc with a certain style to it and there's another disc with a completely different style to it, because the whole album as a whole has the same style, the same goal in mind. And it's not like there's so much music on this album that they just couldn't fit it onto one disc. It's like 77 minutes of music. You can fit that onto one disc. So I don't understand, I cannot wrap my mind around why you would make this 2 discs, because this points out the flaws of this album. Is just the fact that they put it on 2 different discs, because the main issue that I have is that disc 1 as a whole is so much better than disc 2 as a whole. As a complete album, all the songs kick ass and they all kind of mingle together very well, but when you separate them, and it feels kind of disjointed how one part of the album is so focused and flows, and you're just on this high the whole time you're listening to disc 1. From Hardwired all the way to Halo on Fire, it's the best Metallica music that you've heard in years, and very little, if any, low points on that first album. The second disc is where I have a lot of my flaws in the songs, as you guys have already seen. And aside from Spit Out the Bone, those songs feel more like afterthoughts than the first disc. You know, I don't think any of the songs are really afterthoughts. That's probably not a good word to use, but they do feel more like the extra songs than the first disc. The first disc almost seems like they intended to release an EP of just that, maybe with Spit Out the Bone kind of attached to the end of it, but they wanted to make a full album to please their fans, so they added in some other songs that they've been working on, and we have this. But it just doesn't really work as a double disc album. It doesn't work at all like that. The other flaw with that, and this is a little bit of a weird criticism, but it calls out more of the flaw with why compact discs are going away completely. Now, I go out and I buy the physical copy for every band and album that I support because I want to support them. I want them to get my money because I want them to keep doing what they're doing. I don't want to be somebody that just pirates the album, takes away, running away laughing with the free music. I want to support these guys. So I'm going to buy this album regardless, but I promise you when I buy it, it's going to sit on the shelf. I'm probably never going to listen to the discs because I'm going to have it on my iPod. Now, the problem with the compact disc and breaking it up into 2 discs is even if you do listen to CDs, it's going to be a pain in the ass listening to 6 songs and then having to take that disc out, put in that to listen to the rest of the album. Every time you want to if you want to listen to the whole album, you have to pick what disc you want to listen to, and it just really fucking bothers me that they did that. And I don't understand. I haven't heard any member of Metallica defend why they did that. If you guys know, please put it in the comment section below. If somebody has had an interview with James or Lars and they decided, or they put why they decided to do a double disc album, please put it down below to help me understand, because it's just such a weird decision. And the other problem that the whole double disc thing brings into it, which I kind of got into a little bit before I went off on my compact disc tangent, is that this album feels like it blows its load a little too early. You know, forgive the graphic metaphor, but the first 6 songs of this album are the most kick-ass song, you know, along with Spit Out the Bone. That's kind of the closing track, and that's kind of the anomaly in this. But the first 6 songs are by far the best experience you're going to have with this album, and then you're kind of on a little bit of a lower point with the rest of the album. So the second disc of this album has a lot of trouble keeping up with the ferocity of the first disc, and it has a lot of trouble keeping up with the momentum of the first disc. And all that really does is it calls attention to the flaws of your second disc and the songs on your second disc, where if they kind of had it all into one disc and arranged the songs a little bit differently, spread out the songs in the first disc a little bit more, don't have them right next to each other, this would have been a kick-ass complete album, and very little songs would you have skipped past. But now that the fact that the majority of everybody's favorite songs, I guarantee, are going to be on CD1, CD1 is going to get a lot of your play. CD2, with the exception of Spit Out the Bone, is going to be kind of forgotten in the mix compared to that first disc. Now, maybe I'm alone in that. You guys put down in the comment section what you think about that, but just to me, everything negative about this album comes from the choice to make it a double disc album. Now, I've not heard the third disc. I know there's Lords of Summer, there's some new mix, there's some cover songs, which I have heard in the past. I think there's 1 or 2 new ones, so I can't comment on any of that. But just the actual new music, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, is the most kick-ass Metallica album that we have got since Black Album. It is absolutely worth your guys' attention. Whether you're a Metallica fan or not, give it a chance, because I guarantee you're going to like it. When this thing hits the shelves, get in your car, get in your truck, walk, run, take a bus, take a boat, I don't give a shit. Go to the store and buy it. So what did you guys think of Metallica's Hardwired to Self-Destruct? Is this a return to form to Metallica? Did Metallica ever even go away in the first place? Is this your favorite album since the Black Album? Is this your favorite album, period? What's your favorite songs, your least favorite songs? Put all that in the comment section below and let's talk about it. Please like and share this video and hit that subscribe button. That way you get to come back and see me next time. But if that's not soon enough to check out some more of my videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.